Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. This is a podcast to help you find peace with food and overcome disordered eating. And I'm Harriet Frew, aka the Eating Disorder Therapist. And I'm so excited to share with you all kinds of stories, tips, information and guest interviews to help you on your journey in finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening today. Now today I have another guest on the show and I'm talking to Kumiko Lau, who is a legal marketing professional, dancer, part-time model and beauty pageant contestant representing the city of Hong Kong. Kumiko shares about her journey into fitness and healthy eating and how this took a negative turn when she split from her boyfriend and was dealing with the emotional outlay from this. Kumiko followed very restricted diets which led to binge eating and feeling really out of control around food and also having a very negative body image. Over the pandemic, Kumiko has been on a journey of healing and self-discovery, and she's here today to talk more about this. Really looking forward to this interview. Let's go and start. Hi, Kumiko. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Hi, Harriet. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Kumiko, could you just introduce yourself, please, to the listeners?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kumiko from Hong Kong. I was raised in Hong Kong and I'm currently living there. I work in the professional service as a legal business development specialist. And then on the side, I also start my own business and have participated in international pageants representing Hong Kong. So I've got several different titles and it's so nice here to be sharing my experience with eating disorder and my recovery.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Kumiko, could you just take us back, because obviously in more recent years, you've been struggling a bit more with eating disorders and disordered eating, but has it always been this way? What was your relationship like when you were a little girl with food?
Well, when I was a little girl, I don't think I've ever experienced any kind of eating disorder. My family, especially my parents, we love eating. We always eat junk food. In Asia, we have sushi, hamburger and, different kinds of food. Basically, Hong Kong is just like a city of food. We never had any issue. I just ate whatever I wanted and I never bother about clean eating or going vegan, vegetarian, that kind of thing. So it's just that 3 meals and different snacks whenever I wanted, never dieted. And I, never had any concern with food.
Sure. So it sounds like as a child in a way, just kind of quite a healthy relationship with food and probably just eating intuitively and not even thinking about it all too much.
Yeah, correct. Exactly.
Sure. So when for you did you feel that started to change? Was there a sort of point where things started to change for you?
Well, in 2018, so it was my second year starting my corporate career. After graduating from university, I picked up a sport called CrossFit, which was a very pretty intense interval training, doing a lot of burpees and squats and heavy lifting type of sports, which I really enjoyed. I must have to say, this was a sport that I enjoy a lot. And at that time, I did it because somebody challenged me and told me that I don't think you can, I don't think, Kumiko, you can lift any weight. So I think, because I grew up as a dancer, I never lifted any weight or any dumbbells whatsoever in my life. So I was a bit unhappy about this comment and I decided to give it a go. And at that time I've always been eating a lot of junk food and eating everything, especially when I was not so used to, being in a corporate career. I felt like I've definitely gained some pounds, but I never thought so much about this. I was never so aware, so, unhappy about this. So once I started doing CrossFit, at the start, I started looking a little bit slimmer. And then somehow I got addicted because I look at the mirror, I felt like my waist has gotten really small, maybe from 29-inch to 23, 4, something like that. So I started learning, if I wanted to get even slimmer, I had to also change my diet. So in the fitness world, it's always a high protein and then low fats, low carbohydrates, or, counting macros and all these type of things. So I started eating cleaner, but definitely not 100% clean. What I meant was, most of the time when I felt like I wanted to have a pack of chips, maybe I would have, a banana or something instead. I would look for alternative or do more home cooking, but I was never really restricting. I still eat a lot because that sports was pretty, intensive itself. So I think started from then, I started understanding a little bit more about food in general because, in the past, I didn't know what is protein, carbs, and fat. And so funny enough, that year I changed so much. Well, I still think it was a positive change. I began to be more confident at work because I felt like I was always working out, sweating, being in better shape. And then I got promoted at work. And I also got this invitation to represent Hong Kong in a beauty pageant, an international beauty pageant, which I thought was something that I never thought I would be doing. But when I was small, I've always been doing a little bit of modeling, a little bit of acting because of my family background. And I was a dancer when I was small. So fast forwarding to November 2019 when I was preparing for the pageant, well, I was, I obviously to prepare for the pageant, you obviously have to be in the best shape. So at that time, your mindset was all, about the pageant. And I tried to, hire a trainer, which she's a really good trainer. And I started not eating too much carbohydrates a month before the competition, before I flew to Mexico. And it was okay. Like my periods was regular, everything was fine, and everything was, was okay. Just that I got a lot slimmer without the carbohydrates. And then when I came back from the pageant, first of all, the pageant itself didn't end so well. It was a mess. And then second, when I came back, my then boyfriend broke up with me without any, giving me any reason and whatsoever it is. So I felt like it was, the breakup actually made me very sad. And I felt like at that time I didn't know what to do because, he was the person that I somehow had to see on a pretty regular basis. So I felt very scared and I relied on food and I just felt very heartbroken. I didn't know what I could do apart from eating. I don't want to be sharing, all these breakup story with my friends and my family. I just, I'm someone who can hide things very well. I started eating a lot of food, and obviously from looking very slim to suddenly gaining 10 kilograms is something, is something that I wasn't able to accept. So then I decided out of the blue to do this fitness transformation in May 2020 last year with like another fitness studio. So this time they put me on like a calorie restricted diet, and I had to calculate a calorie, macro, protein, fat, carbohydrates, and also exercising. So I was told to only exercise minimum 2-3 times, but I think I was so desperate to lose all these weight. So I went full on and then be super, super picky and crazy about eating clean and calculating that 0.5 kilogram of that. I still remember I was calculating all these little calories, like literally 1 gram of the vegetable, 1 gram of the chicken. It's just very precise about the calorie and the scale, and everything was steam. And I still remember I didn't use any oil. I always use all these diet oil, like 0-calorie food, and drinking a lot of Diet Coke and all these things. So, well, honestly, that works because my body was basically in starvation mode. So definitely I lost a lot of weight, and I got so addicted because I think, I never thought that, well, I would lose all these weight so fast. And then I began to lose my period too. And I've lost it for 3 to 4 months. or actually more, like 4 to 5 months. And I felt like, at that time I told myself, you know what, when I lost my period, it was absolutely fine because it was so much more convenient. I didn't have to, suffer from all these PMS and all these things. So I thought, it was nothing. So, and after the transformation, I will still try to keep track of my macros and add a little bit of calories and decrease a little bit of calorie here and there. And I started sort of collapsed. Like I couldn't control anymore because I felt like, every day I woke up with the purpose of meeting that calories. Like my goal is 1,500. So I wake up and think like, my goal for today is not to exceed 1,500. So I started thinking about that, sometimes going lower, sometimes going higher, and then adding all the numbers of a week and divide by 7, some crazy things like that. And I think one day I was going to a hotel for a staycation with my friends, and then they were eating that cheeseburger or burrito or something, and I couldn't resist anymore. So I finished the entire burrito. And from that day, I started eating proper food again. And then once I started eating, I couldn't stop. Look, like I was hiding myself, bringing myself a lot of chocolates, and I hide myself in some weird location out of, aside from my friends, family. I wasn't in a relationship back then. So I was basically, before my parents came home, I would always eat all the food I wanted and then hide all these like bags and all these rubbish. So I always had this kind of feeling, and I would feel so terrible after eating all the food, and then step on the scale noticing I'm gaining weight, and then started cutting my calorie again. And this is just a vicious cycle that that never really ended. So I think from then I knew that I really had a problem with eating, and it was an eating disorder.
Sure. Gosh, I mean, thank you for sharing your story, because it sounds like, I guess, as well, as often happens for many people, that it started out as quite a sort of positive thing of trying to kind of be healthy and fitter. And in those early stages as well, it sounds like as well, it kind of boosted your self-esteem, like you felt good and it gave you more confidence. But then it sounds like it sort of crossed a line, didn't it?
Yes, I think so too. I must have to say, all these trainers, all these, CrossFit people and pageant contestants or whoever they are, I don't think, they are bad. They are, they definitely are someone who motivate you to do better in your life. But it's just that I think I took it to the very extreme way. And sometimes there are so many information online. Like, for instance, if you go to Instagram, there are like this diet, sometimes there are like new diet, and you're very, you feel very confused by, what should I be doing? What should I be eating? And, your mind is occupied by all these things, which is very unhealthy.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, there's so much information out there, isn't there? And I think once you get focused in that very food preoccupied kind of, wanting to change your body place, that you can become, and you can get yourself in a really difficult place quite quickly, can't you? Because you're sort of inundated with an overwhelm of information. So Kumiko, could you talk a bit more as well about like, what's it like in the world of kind of beauty pageants? What's it like in terms of like, how did that sort of impact, do you think, your relationship with food, and also just how you felt about your body? Because I guess you're having to be in like swimwear, are you, and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, I would say when I was competing in the pageant, it was 2019. I wasn't very aware about body issues. I felt like, I've worked hard in the gym, and everybody's body was very different. But definitely there was a feeling that before any swimsuit competition or anything that's very physique related, I definitely felt like, we shouldn't be eating too much. But, at that time, I didn't really feel like that pageant was something that led to my eating disorder issue. It was more of the heartbreak and also of not knowing, how to deal with unpleasant situation. And then I relied on food when I was, feeling down and depressed.
Sure. So it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds like as well, perhaps when you went into the beauty pageant, you were actually at that time in a more sort of confident place, and perhaps your self-esteem was a bit more robust. So in a way, you were probably, like less focused on kind of body image and maybe more just enjoying the process of it.
Yeah, I think so too, because at that time, the pageant itself even didn't go very well, but I learned so much from preparing the pageant. I felt like, well, obviously there are different types of bodies that I saw in the pageant. There are definitely someone who is on the curvier side. There's people who are more slender, someone who's more athletic. I felt like there's such a diversity being promoted in pageant. And I felt like I didn't feel so bad about myself in the pageant. I just thought it was something that I didn't think too much about at that time.
Yeah, no, sure. But it sounds like, and I think this is just so interesting that you said that actually when you came back from the pageant and then you split up with your boyfriend, and it sounds like that was quite heartbreaking. That was a real kind of loss for you. And that's when that was a real kind of trigger then for kind of your relationship with food to go a bit off track.
Yeah, I think so. Especially that happened right away after the pageant was over. So, and that person, it was not someone, I don't want to review who he is and, he does, but it's somebody that I had to see on a pretty regular basis. Like I had to see that person. So I felt like I didn't want to, show up and then looking very different in front of him when we have broken up. I don't want to feel like, I was a loser. I didn't want to feel ugly, in front of him. I sort of had this sort of weird thinking about how I should have looked after breaking up with him, something like that. And I've always, I began to question a lot about, what if I look better? Would he want me back? What if I started getting in back to, top shape? Does that mean that, I have more worth? Like I began to have a lot of questions and issues and, all these weird thinking on my brain. And that was the, when the eating disorder started kicking in.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think, you're not alone at all in, like, I think eating disorders, disordered eating can often be triggered by something like, an emotional event, could be like a bereavement, a breakup, a transition, even something that kind of destabilizes, I guess, your emotional world. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds like even before that point, you hadn't really been so focused on your body, but suddenly when you felt that rejection and the relationship broke down, obviously, like understandably, it would have affected your self-worth. But then almost the solution felt like, I need to change my body now, or I need to kind of focus more on that.
Yes, definitely. I felt like before the beauty pageant, I was, because these days and now I know how to calculate calories. So a few days ago, before talking to you, I was actually looking back at some of the pictures in the past before preparing for the beauty pageant. I was actually eating almost like 2,700 to 3,000 calories per day, like eating lots of salmon and all these things. I never had a problem with my weight and period. So I felt like, when I look back, I just find it I just really understand that I've really been under eating during that transformation phase last year. Also, to that note, after coming back and with the breakup, I felt like I didn't know who I could talk to about this breakup. I felt like a lot of people don't understand, or I've assumed people not understanding, because maybe some people will say, some of my friends have commented, it was such, it's not like a long relationship, it shouldn't have affected you that much, and this and that. And I felt like, well, I was the only one feeling it, and I just felt so stupid. Like, why would I feel so bad? Well, maybe the other person, I mean, the then boyfriend was very happy with somebody else already. Like, I just felt like I was such a fool, and there was nothing I could do about it. Yeah.
Sure. Which just sounds really tough for you, doesn't it? Because I think in a way there's kind of no logical ways with love, is there? Like we can fall for people, it very intensely, I guess, in quite a short period of time, and that relationship can still mean a great deal, even if it doesn't last for ages.
Yeah, I think so too. And sometimes, well, I think we women are especially more emotional, and sometimes we just feel things more than men. I don't know about this, but it's just that I think now I look back at it, I don't feel as stupid as I felt before. I felt like, well, I felt upset and I felt depressed. I felt unwanted and all these feelings. And it was okay. It is totally okay to have felt that way because, these are the real feelings that we had. And it's just that I think I'm a very fortunate kid. I think I'm always very grateful for all my parents, all my friends and support. I've always had what I wanted, I think, in my life. But I think, maybe it is the very first few times that I've dealt with rejection and I just lost control over food when I was, experiencing situation like that. And maybe, it's just a lesson learned. And it's okay to have experienced something like this. Now I look back at it, it is still a journey. Yeah, it's still a journey to overcome this issue. It's definitely something that I'm still working very hard on. But I also understand that it's okay not to be okay. And it's so cliche to say this, but there are times that you really don't feel okay. And there are times that you feel really upset. And it's okay to have those feelings because one day the feelings will pass and the feelings will change and you'll be okay again.
No, so true, isn't it? And I think, again, you bring up a really important point that I think sometimes people feel like, actually I'm better off than a lot of people and my life's pretty good, so I shouldn't be having these feelings. Whereas I guess, like you're saying now, like you can look back and realize that actually it was perfectly acceptable to have those feelings. If you're rejected by somebody who you really love, you're going to feel perhaps quite heartbroken and sad and, maybe anxious and alone. And, in a way, that's the kind of healthy response, isn't it, to a rupture in a relationship that was really important to you?
Yeah, I think so too. And also to your point, I think in the past, I think, especially when you're doing all these pageants, you're in a professional career, you started your own business, and then you are always fit and always very busy, and you're always on the go doing so many things at the same time. Sometimes that actually not having breaks and not having a proper rest will actually sabotage your eating habits as well. Because I think because we're too controlled and we want to get things done in a perfect shape or form. And sometimes because of, wanting to achieve so many things will also somehow damage some of the things. And in my situation would be food and eating.
Sure. Well, I think it's a good point, isn't it? I think in the kind of, in our culture, often it's very praised, isn't it, to be like super busy, just doing 101 things. And I guess like COVID has, made a lot of people have to slow down quite a lot. But yeah, I think like your relationship with food can get very sort of intertwined with that, can't it? And maybe as well, I think when we are so super busy and just always being productive and always doing, it's hard to always like feel your feelings properly or to be in touch with your whole self because of you're always like distracted or doing something all the time.
I think so too. Also during COVID period, I was the one who actually wanted to be more successful during the COVID period because I thought, a lot of people would probably be, slacking off and, not focusing so much on their fitness, health, and career. So I actually I wouldn't say it's bad or good, but I did so much more. I used all these network to build up my, presence. I tried to network. I thought of other ways to develop business during COVID. And I think these are all good things. But to your note, I think sometimes in our life, we just want to achieve things like doing pageant, doing this, doing that, and that. In COVID, we need to be the winner of the situation. Like all these mindset actually drive us crazy. And sometimes I wonder why I had to do so many things. And I recently, through journaling and through writing, I discovered it is because I was very insecure about myself. I was, especially after the breakup, I felt like I need so many more things to prove who I am. I need so many like different weapons, doing this, doing that, doing this to make me feel more, more proud and, more confident. But actually, this is not the real security that, I could get from doing all these things.
So interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds like in a way, although the breakup was like incredibly painful at the time, it sounds like it almost did really pivot you in a sort of new direction to kind of look more at yourself and, how you deal with your emotions, your self-worth, and kind of doing that deeper work, which has been really valuable.
Yes, true. Yeah, I feel like, after the breakup, it was the time for me to prove that I could live by myself. I could, be confident and be successful without this person. I wanted to prove the world, I could do this and that. I think I had a lot of this kind of girl boss feeling and the kind of emotions that I thought, either 0 or 100. If I wanted to, be happy, I had to be so successful. Like I shouldn't be crying anymore. I shouldn't be, feeling weak. Crying is a sign of, being weak. I always had this kind of thoughts last year. And it's just quite tiring as well, because sometimes you feel very excited, sometimes you feel very low, and sometimes you eat a lot, and sometimes you don't. And that actually really damages me.
Yeah, no, sure. So yeah, you just kind of realize it sounds like your perspective has just shifted a lot, hasn't it, going through all of this? Kumiko, do you, looking back now as well, like, do you wish that maybe when you had split with your boyfriend that you had felt more able to talk to your friends and family about your feelings and to be a bit more vulnerable?
Yeah, I felt like I would say I have very good parents and very supportive friends, but I think it was more of myself that didn't want to share with them how I really felt. And sometimes maybe my parents, they are a bit, tougher because I'm the only child. They would say so many things like, it is just a breakup. You can do this, it is nothing, I told you shouldn't have this and that. So there are so many, I know that they're saying that because they're being caring. And I think it's the culture where sometimes Asian parents, they don't really express love so directly.
Yeah.
I also grew up in the US too. So I feel like it's very different when it comes to expressing our care and love and concern to other people in Asia. It's a bit more passive. So, but I wouldn't say, if to your question, I think I wish I could be more vulnerable. Actually, I wish I could be more mature handling this situation. For instance, instead of running away and hiding from this then boyfriend, I wish I could be more open to him about the situation I was facing and told him how I felt. And instead of not having a proper closure, I would rather actually have ended things in a more complete and in a more mature manner.
Yeah, no, sure. It's so tough though, isn't it? Because I think for all of us, in a way, we kind of do the best we can at the time. Don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. But, it is what happened. Sometimes there are so many unfortunate things happen in our life, but without all these things, our life wouldn't be complete, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like in a way, like it was a really difficult time, but like so much learning has come from this, hasn't it? Like, I'm really sure that if you're having to deal with a breakup again at some point in the future, you probably would deal with it quite differently because of you have emotionally matured, I guess, and grown so much through the pain of the last one.
Yes, I think so too. And I've understand so much more about myself too. I felt like a lot of the times I wanted to appear very strong because I wasn't very secure about who I was. And I felt like I needed a lot of different identities and things to make me, more of a stronger woman. But actually, I feel like a real strong woman or, a beautiful woman, can be very vulnerable too. It's okay to, be vulnerable and be, show your weak signs, because, your weakness is completely fine, because not everybody, has the courage to be vulnerable, to be honest.
It's so true, isn't it? And are you a fan of sort of Brené Brown's work and her, like, The Power of Vulnerability TED Talk? Are you sort of a fan of her?
No, I haven't watched this, but I would definitely check this out.
No, I'd really recommend it, actually, if as well, for anyone that's listening, because I think as well, Kumiko, the things you're talking about as well, so many people will relate to, because I think it's not uncommon that people associate vulnerability with being weak, and that it's seen as like a good thing to, like, be a bit of a girl boss and just kind of keep striving forward, keep achieving. And it's interesting, actually, because with Brené Brown's work, Brené came to, like, her research, she's done a lot of research on vulnerability, and she came to it as a real skeptic. She really couldn't really believe that being vulnerable was a strength. But then she's gone on to do a lot of research, and just to really show that actually a lot of the most successful people are really able to be vulnerable with their emotions. And so it's quite powerful. But it sounds like you have kind of come to that conclusion yourself through your own experience.
Yeah. I think that I'm still learning, as I told you in the beginning. I'm still learning to balance my health, my eating, my cooking, my entrepreneurship, my day-to-day job, and this pageant career. But this month, actually last month, I decided to really completely step away from the place that would remind me of the breakup, because I felt like I needed a complete closure. Like, even though there wasn't one between me and the then boyfriend, I felt like not staying in the place that I was in, that I was always seeing him, was a big move for me. And also, I felt like I was doing so many different careers, outside of my day-to-day job. I felt like it was the time for me to really take a break and really ask myself what I wanted to do. And it's okay that I didn't have an answer, because when I actually started, stepping away, I felt like actually there are so many things I wanted to do, but it's just I didn't have the time. And sometimes I still feel upset, or sometimes I still feel insecure and all these things. But when you have more time with yourself, you understand that it's okay to really take time to heal, because only having more time with yourself and talking to yourself, more me time, you will be able to really feel more grounded and feel more, overall happier.
Yeah, it's such wise advice, I think, isn't it? Because I think, it's when we do slow down and we have a bit of chance to just, like, even daydream or to sort of connect with our body more, we do feel so much more grounded, don't we? Whereas we're kind of busy and just doing and distracted, it can be quite an anxious place, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. Also, to that note, I was very unhappy last year. Other than this, obviously the boyfriend, I felt like when I lost my period, that was the time I really started understanding and noticing it was something I had to fix. And I'm so glad and I'm so happy that I was able to notice that at a very early stage, because I only lost my period for 4 months. And I read so many researches online. There are girls that have lost a period for over 10 years and even more. So I felt like I've done the right thing to notice it and to really allow myself to eat more. So if you were asking me how I sort of recover the eating disorder, is I started eating more intuitively. At the beginning, it was very tough because it was something, it felt like I have been starving for 3 months. So I've been eating food that I didn't want to eat for, like, I couldn't eat for like 3 months, like hamburgers, like all these, like fried chicken, all these things. And for sure, like, I did put on a lot of weight. But I felt like when I started incorporating all these food, I felt like you just naturally don't want to eat too much when you allow yourself to eat, when you know that there is no restriction. And then you would eventually find a balance between, eating, how to eat healthy, and also rethink what eating healthy really means. Does it mean green salad all the time? What does that mean? To me now, it's more like eating whole food, eating, healthy food. But at the same time, if you sometimes want some chocolate, some fried chicken, some sushi, some carbohydrates at like 11 p.m., then just have it, because your body is so much smarter than you think. The more that you try to starve and try to restrict yourself from not eating those food that you wanted, the more the body would crave for it. And then when it happens, you would just want everything at the same time.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And I think it's just so helpful for you to, one, say actually that you recognise early that there was a problem and you took some action, because I think that is crucial sometimes with eating disorders, because I think the longer it sort of hangs around, you can become more entrenched, become more a habit, become part of identity, much harder to let go of. So I think it's so positive. And then the second thing as well, talking about just like actually just allowing yourself to eat more. And then, and then it sounds like as well, like, when you did that, the kind of urge to binge or to eat like huge amounts of food, that really kind of went down because of your body was getting more what it needed. And it sounds like you then able to sort of trust your appetite and sort of slowly begin to get more in touch with your sort of hunger cues and to be able to listen to your body much more.
Yes, definitely. And also that, it's likely that I will also be doing another beauty pageant. So it's an exciting news, but at the same time, I would also remind myself not to push myself very hard. And I really want to use this pageant as a platform to advocate eating disorder if I could, because I think that it is something that a lot of the girls, especially young girls, are facing. And with the popularity of social media, it is something that, would cause a lot more issues than ever compared to the past.
Yeah, no, so true. So it sounds like, again, if you're doing another pageant, you're going to approach it in a different way. And it sounds so positive, I think, that you're obviously talking about these issues really openly, Kumiko, because I think as well, I know you said, in fact, in Hong Kong, disordered eating disorders are not talked about maybe as much as in the UK, but I'm sure so many of those issues are just there. They're just a bit more hidden.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm sure people would, there are definitely people who have experienced eating disorder. And when I was actually talking about this issue within my company, I actually received quite a lot of feedback responding to me that, I've actually experienced that too. And especially during COVID, it gets more severe than ever. So I think there are certain level of severity in terms of eating disorders, and people may have experienced, more severe manner like myself. And some people may just, have some small symptoms. And I think that those things couldn't be overlooked, because I started out as having little bit of symptoms and, started dieting. And then sometimes when I see people like eating green salad all the time and just telling me that not to eat any carbohydrates, I get scared. I feel scared and feel sorry too, because I feel like, don't get into this eating disorder cycle, because it was actually the first sign that I had in the past.
Yeah, and it's so true, isn't it? And I think that's the slightly dangerous thing, isn't it? Because I think it can start off from a place of like really good intentions, but just so quickly can slip into a place where you feel out of control and your eating becomes disordered and it becomes quite dark, whereas in the early stages, it can feel more like you're doing something good. Well, thank you, Kumiko, for coming on the podcast today and just for sharing your story so openly, because I think it's just going to be so helpful and inspire so many of the listeners just to develop their own awareness of their relationship with food and to know that recovery is possible.
Yeah, thanks so much for helping me, and to all the listeners who are listening to this podcast. I just want to say that if you're experiencing any kind of eating disorder, even is not serious, you're not alone because, well, I've been there and sometimes I still struggle with food, and it's definitely okay not to be okay. So definitely, don't feel bad. And when you're experiencing all these issues, talk to someone, seek help, and you're beautiful, and don't feel that you're not worthy.
Thank you, Kumiko. It's such a powerful message. And just one thing I didn't ask you as well is like, where can people find you if they want to know more about you or get in touch?
Well, mainly I'm on Instagram, so you could search Kumiko, Kumiko Lau, Lau. I mainly post about some of my eating and some of my YouTube stuff. So in my YouTube channel, that's going to be launched soon, I will be posting a lot of singing videos and some of the things about how I recover from eating and what I eat in a day and stuff like that.
Okay, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Kumiko. And have a great day.
Thank you so much, Harriet. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. And do go and check out all of Kumiko's info in the show notes. If you're not following me already, do seek me out on Instagram at The Eating Disorder Therapist. And for further support with your relationship with food, including my online courses, do go to theeatingdisordertherapist.co.uk and you'll find out more info there. I'd be really grateful if you would rate and review this podcast, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much. I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.